We're now going to have another really wonderful presentation, and we're going to hear more about the efforts going on in entrepreneurship and innovation on campus. And we've been hearing about that. I think you know that that's been a big push of the university. And it wasn't just the start when it began the whole Carolina Innovates plan, of course, with Trustee Cottle and others under Chancellor Thorpe. This was a big drive, but it was also building on an entrepreneurial spirit here. It's really been taking off. I think since 2010 in particular, we've seen a real rise to very high levels of the beginnings of companies. And just as you hear, even keeping up with all the companies is not that easy, trying to even track them, because people start them, then another one starts, and another one starts from that one. So there's a lot of excitement in this area. They're going to give a presentation talking about this, but I wanted to also emphasize that what's exciting to me is that these activities are not found in just one area. I mean, you just heard about biomedical engineering, which already attracts students with a pretty broad range of interests in virtually all aspects of science and technology. But the innovation comes from students and faculty in every area, from music to art to the humanities, to the social sciences, the sciences. You heard from Chair Stone talking about the speaker at the Ed Foundation who was an athlete. That made me think about the fact that this term we have 3 teams that are vying to be the top 1 or 2 in their athletic competition at the very same time that we had a record number of academic athletic honors, the highest of any public university in America. And a lot of our athletes also go on in entrepreneurial activities. Joe DeSimone says the women's soccer team is one of his major areas that he goes to recruit. So again, this is a full university, pan-university, really pan-generational movement. So with that, I'm just really pleased to be able to introduce Judith Cone, who, as you all know, is a fireball herself, just recently given the award for the person most influential in bringing innovation and entrepreneurship to campuses from the Deshmandi Foundation. And she's going to be joined by Sean Higchin, an assistant professor in the Division of Molecular Pharmaceutics at the UNC-Chapel School of Pharmacy, and Shruti Shaw, the class of 2011, thank you for being here, who led the first student leadership team for innovation and entrepreneurship and now has her own company, More Loot. So thank you. Judith.
Well, thank you very much, Chancellor Fold. We're delighted to be here, and to follow Nancy Albritton no one wants to do that. So I should have gone first. I just want to make that. But when we first started in 2010, we identified some foundational needs for the university. To be this smooth pipeline of innovation, we had to have certain things that we really had, but maybe they were not even on fire as they should be, or there were missing pieces. And we quickly identified biomedical engineering. We talk about hybrid disciplines. So we have environmental engineering in the School of Public Health. And we had this small biomedical engineering program that Nancy was trying to be the miracle worker, and you can see that she really is, and crossing all those boundaries, it's just so difficult to do, and yet she has made that happen. And so it's just been a joy to work with her and have that in that roadmap and see these things come to life. We also called for applied physical sciences, and that is on its way. You'll hear about that in the next few years, and then to beef up our data sciences, and we're working on that too. So all of those things that we identified as, these are the foundational pieces we're working on, though, and you see great, amazing leadership. And the joy of my job is to just try to create a smooth pathway and to get to work with people like Nancy and these amazing students and our guests today. And in the audience, there are many folks that are related to the work, so I just want to thank them. This is certainly a very collaborative effort. We're all in it together, and it is completely underwritten by goodwill and hard work from a lot of people. I wanted to take a moment to say that it's obvious that we're committed to this because you've seen the resources go into this, and we're not just committed to this patentable IP. That's part of it, and as the Chancellor just spoke about. But we're committed to work on concussions that help change NFL rules, on childhood obesity that has led to improvements in lunch school programs, work in the music department, as you've heard about, with cultural diplomacy. They received a $1 million grant from the State Department to take hip-hop and pop music around the world to build relationships among young people. And of course, you saw the story of Jeff and all the students in biomedical making these hands. That's an incredible story. And it's on and on and on. And I know you're tired and have been here a long time, but we could talk to you forever about stories like this. It's so inspiring. And of course, we're committed to advancing our patentable ideas, such as our work in cancer, hemophilia, HIV, AIDS, infectious disease, cystic fibrosis, COPD, nanomedicines, gene therapies, and non-life science areas such as acoustic sound generation, solar energy, materials. Again, the list is very long. And finally, we are committed to preparing students so that they graduate data literate with the entrepreneurial mindset and skill set to prepare them to be leaders in championing important ideas and converting them into value in all works of life. And some will become entrepreneurs. So we're committed to this. Some people think of universities as really research and teaching, and they forget this, or if they talk about this, this is a side issue. But we have that as an equal part of our university as you are getting that message. There's been a long symbiotic relationship between industry, federal and state governments, private industry, social sector. All of these have to work together because no idea that we generate can have value if we can't get it converted and put into use. And that's very hard for a university to do by itself. We almost always have to have partners. And I'm so happy that Bryant Moore is here with us today. Bryant, if you would stand or wave your hand. Bryant is a graduate of UNC with a PhD in biochemistry a few years ago, and went and had a long, distinguished career in industry with 10 years as vice president at Medtronics. And now he's back leading that bridge between the outside world and this university and how we can partner to take ideas out. And so we're very thrilled to have him. He's already making a big difference, and he's only been here a few months. So thank you, Bryant. Society expects universities to help solve pressing challenges and drive the global economy. So variations have occurred over time in how we do these things and how this relationship has shifted and who does what and where are we along this pathway. So here's an innovation pipeline, and it's pretty standard. You know, you start with a lot of stuff at the end, and then you do the work on the basic side to do it. But then you get in feasibility. Is this marketable? And you heard yesterday John Clark talk about marketability, feasibility, viability. And so, again, we can't do that whole pipeline by ourselves. We have to have partners. And so the covenant between the industry and universities has changed over time. So in 1975, 75% of the top 100 innovations, as reported by R&D Magazine, came from industry. That's 70% from industry and 30% from federal labs and universities. But by 2006, that had flipped. And so now 70% comes from universities. That puts even a greater burden on us to figure out how to navigate this pipeline. Some of you will recall the role of Bell Labs and Xerox PARC and multinationals like IBM and Burroughs Wellcome and their research arms. RTP was built to capture some of that research engine here for North Carolina, and they made tremendous contributions to discovery and the economy. But starting in the 1990s, again, the shift happened, and industry labs dedicated to the pursuit of scientific discovery found their funding beginning to decline, and their mission shift from open-ended problem solving to short-term commercial targets. A lot of reasons for that. We don't have time to go into it. But industry still invests heavily in R&D. But if you look at this, they now spend 80% of their dollars on development, and they're looking to us. And so this is just another reason that this is so critical for us to get this right. So where are they going to look? They're going to look to universities and federal labs, but they also look to startups. And this is a story we know very well. Sometimes we just don't put it in this context. The tech revolution and the availability of venture capital fueled the new role of entrepreneurs as part of the R&D strategy for industry. And this is true of our UNC startups as well. So industry routinely watches for entrepreneurs who conceive of new products, services, and processes. It may be their products and services and your product and service. And they let them do all the hard discovery work, proof of concept, see if there's customers who care, and they watch that. And then they come in to say, that's how we're going to get the front of the pipeline. We'll buy that. It's easier, cheaper for us to let you do that hard early work. And actually, startups are probably better at it because they're more breaking the mold and not constrained by the installed base of an institution. YouTube is a great example. If you remember, not very long ago, February of 2005, 3 guys from PayPal started YouTube, and they wanted to have a web video sharing company. I don't know what they thought they would do as far as market cap and all of that, but I can't imagine they ever dreamed that big. But less than a year, they were bought by Google for $1.6 billion. And it was because they proved the concept. Millions of people jumped onto YouTube and started uploading their homemade videos. And now we take it for granted. But that was very short ago. Jody Simone's company that you mentioned earlier, Carbon 3D, is less than 24 months old, but Forbes just gave it $1 billion valuation based on how much venture capital has come into it and its promise of what it can do. And you know, multinationals are already talking to them. Now, the interesting thing about oh, my time's done. Sorry, I didn't know if it'd ring out loud like that, but I didn't want to go over my time, so I'll quickly get through the rest of this. His company is doing sponsored research with us. We don't own 3D. That was a separate company. It didn't have anything to do with our IP. But he's so generous, and he wanted to make sure Caroline is in on this. So we're doing sponsored research, and we just filed our first patent from that work. And when he talks to companies that are looking at him, the multinationals, he's saying, I want manufacturing in North Carolina. So he's pulling strings between the West Coast and here, and we're very grateful for that. So now we have this new covenant, and what happens if we fail to convert ideas into practical benefit? If our university is not adept at doing this, then knowledge lies dormant, and the university becomes a bottleneck in the innovation pipeline. And this is unrealized potential. And since we have a heavy focus on life science, if there's a bottleneck, it's actually about saving lives. And so there's a lot of responsibility for us, and we take this really seriously, and we want to be best of class in doing this. And another factor that makes it critical that we excel in driving innovation through the pipeline is that the fact that we take on the most pressing challenges in the world. That is not something industry can afford to do until it becomes a time where there is a solution that they could then take into development and make money on it. So we ask ourselves, who can address the most pressing challenges facing the world, and what can we do about that? What's the answer? And so that's where we are today. We've taken that challenge. We realize where we play in this global infrastructure of the innovation pipeline, and we have put in motion, we've already started the preliminary work that you've heard about for a long time has laid the foundation for us to now move into this more technical side of really working with industry in a more in-depth way and moving IP along. So you've seen our to-do list many times. It's a sample to-do list. There's to be thousands of things added to the to-do list. And people understand this, and they really want to help us and all of us work together. So universities do basic research and applied research, and we do a little bit of the development, but again, as I mentioned with Bryant being here and our industry partners in the development with Mark Mears and David Ruth, we're all working together on this, but we have to form these partnerships. We've got to pull this IP through the pipeline. And to complicate matters in our lives, our licensing is about 84% in the life science, so that you add in years and billions of dollars and clinical trials and FDA approvals. So what we set in motion today, we're going to be looking at 13, 15 years from now. So that return in a life science is not like a engineering cycle. It is a very long, expensive process. So now let's turn our attention to what we've done. You all worked for the last 2 years with a committee that was Innovation and Entrepreneurship Committee, and you worked with the Chancellor and the Provost, and you all decided to create a new unit, and the Chancellor created the Vice Chancellor's Office of Commercialization and Economic Development. And so we've been busy at work since February, and we've been hiring. Here's the secret to success: just hire really wonderful, brilliant people that share Carolina values and really are collaborative and work in a great spirit. And so we've been busy doing that, and you'll hear from others as we go along. So we look at our university as an ecosystem, and no one office can do this alone. So we have talent, support, and climate. We can push on all those buttons. And someday, if you have questions about that, I can go into that. I'm not going to do that now. Here's a sample of the network. We meet monthly. And we have 125 people on this campus that work in some way to advance innovation and entrepreneurship. We come together, we work together, we do strategy, we share stories and support each other. And that's a sampling. It was too clouded I kept adding things, and I thought, oh, you can't even read it, so I stopped, but there you go. So we are all working on one strategy, one vision, one mission. And so there is the formal vision for this work, and you've seen that many times. And here is a simple mission, but very complex to do: be a place where innovators thrive. So we could never predict, and I would venture to say, I could be wrong, and our students from BME can correct me, that when they came here and they got into BME, they were doing things that they never dreamed they would do. Because how would Jeff known about a kid that needed a hand? That was a senior project. They go out and they find these challenges and then they solve them. And faculty led them into that world, but the light bulbs go on. You never know where those light bulbs are. And so we have to be the place. And if we're the place where innovators thrive, we will conquer the world. And that's true of every university. It's not uniquely Carolina, but we have to take care of ours. And so on the impact, we have a set of impact, and obviously it is improving the world. We're a mission-driven organization, and so of course that's it. And so I'm not going to go through those details. You have them in the note, but that's what drives all of us to work together. Again, a very collaborative group. Now, we look at this impact and we say, you've seen this slide, I think, before, but we have 301 startups in our Salesforce database. Changes constantly because people are starting new companies. We never take them out. Some of them close, don't make it, they're sold, they change their name, and we can't keep tracking them because they've been absorbed. But there's 262 that are still active. And this is about the ones in North Carolina. So there's 150 still active, 38,000 jobs, and $7 billion in revenue annually. And this includes Quintiles, but Quintiles is about $4 billion of that. So there's a lot of other companies doing great contributions to the economy. So I think that's pretty impressive. And on this 301 startups, they've raised $5.5 billion in funding that we know about. So here are the formal tech transfer stats over time. So look at the 91 companies started, and those are the ones that we actually own the IP on. So there was 301. So only a third of them are the formal university-owned IP-based. The rest of them are started by faculty. Jody Simone's is in the 301. It's not in this. So it's a great story about the breadth of startups. And we're recognized, one of our goals is to be recognized not for self-aggrandizement, but because we want to attract great talent and keep it. And so Reuters came out last week with the world's most innovative universities, and we were 15 on that list. But I want to point out that there were 4 systems that reported as a statewide system, their stats, which put them above us in the list. So the state of California, Texas, Wisconsin, and Michigan reported, and so I think we're higher in that list. But it's still really great because this is global, so it has Cambridge and different, and I gave you the list just so you would have it. And of course, the Chancellor already spoke about Dwight and Lowry and the chancellor going up to Boston and receiving an award for the university to be the leading university. So these are the people that we serve that are creating great innovations, that are helping lead. And we have two wonderful speakers for you today. And I want to tell you a quick story about Sean Hingen. So a couple of weeks ago, the Eshelman Institute started its first call for proposals and awarding of the grant money from the Eshelman gift. And so I was privileged to be on that selection committee, and oh my goodness, I spent weeks studying Sean's work, other people's work, and so I'm reading all about glioblastoma multiforme. And I've got I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I'm ready. I go in there and I get to meet him. He did a great presentation, and everything was very positive. And I was really just blown away by these amazing proposals that came for this very unusual gift of this discretionary funds from the Eshelman gift. But the next week, a friend sent me an email and said, a friend, 33-year-old father of a 2-year-old boy, 4-year-old boy, had an event. He went to the emergency room. They found out he had 2 glioblastoma multiforme. I knew what that was. I would never have known it. And I called Sean, and I said, oh my gosh, can we help? And he gets the docs over at UNC. I mean, there are phone calls on the weekend. That made it come to life. And I think I talked to you one time. All of these things that look like statistics, they're real. You see Jeff, and you see that little kid that's going to be now a product engineer, you know, and it's about real people. And Sean's doing wonderful work, so please help me welcome Sean.
All right, good morning, everybody. And I just want to say what an honor and a privilege it is to get to speak to you today. And as Judith said, the work in our lab is actually trying to create an entirely new approach to treating cancer, and from an unlikely source, actually by using a stem cell. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about the disease. Judith told a little bit about it, and the challenges we face with trying to treat these devastating cancers. And then how the innovative solutions that we're trying to come up with can help us attack and address these urgent medical needs. So I won't have too many slides here, but let's see. Okay, there we go. Oh, okay. He looks familiar. Okay, that's me again. So as Judith said, we work on glioblastoma, or GBM. It's the most common primary brain tumor, but it's also one of the most devastating forms of cancer. It's never far from the news. So the picture right here is a young lady named Brittany Maynard. So CNN followed her story just a year or so ago, 2 years ago. She's 29 years old, in the prime of her life. She was a newlywed, just ready to take off. She's diagnosed with a GBM. She actually chose medically assisted suicide in the state of Oregon because the treatment options available to her were so poor. And this disease is so aggressive and so devastating. Can you imagine that, 29 years old? We have to do better than that. But thanks to the amazing environment here at UNC and the amazing support, we can do better than that. And we can not only do better than that, we can actually take a leap forwards in the care and treatment for diseases like glioblastoma and GBM. So the standard of care for GBM, it was developed 30 years ago in the mid-'80s, about 1985. Surgery, chemoradiation, it's not real good, and it's 30 years old. It only gives patients about a year. And that number has not really improved in almost 3 decades. The approaches in our lab are trying to create a radical new strategy to treating glioblastoma, and it starts with a stem cell. So we're building on technology. It actually won the Nobel Prize just 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's kind of crazy, but it lets us convert your skin into your brain. So we can actually morph the skin cells in your arm into cells that look and act just like the cells in the inside of your brain. These are called induced neural stem cells, or INSCs. And the reason we do this, the key to doing this, is because INSCs will chase your cancer. So I'll say it again because it's the key to our whole thing. INSCs will chase your cancer. So when we put these things in the brain, they will move around and they'll actually find your main tumor, but also they'll move around and they'll find all those invasive roots, all the fingers of tumor that had spread through your brain. Surgery doesn't get to those. Chemo can't reach these. Radiation doesn't get rid of these. But these little INSCs will move around and they'll find all these little cells. And because we can load them up with drugs, once they reach them, they can deliver these therapies right into the cancer cell, and we can start to kill it no matter where that tumor is spread throughout your brain. And also, because you are your own source for your cancer therapy, it's safer and faster and more effective than many of the other types of drugs out there. So with the amazing support from the school, we've been able to make some great progress on this recently. I just want to show you a couple quick slides of the type of work we've been doing. So first of all, it's this skin flipping thing, right? So it was discovered just about 3 years ago, so it's brand new. The problem is, if we ever have any hope of using this to treat a cancer patient, it has to be fast. We can't take years to make these things. And what we've been doing over the last couple of years is creating a new process that lets us make these cells in only 2 days. And so what we've been doing is actually, let's see if I can do this. So what we do is take human skin samples, we make your cells, we then altered this process. It's a big word, it's called transdifferentiation. Basically what it means is we can use a little kind of magic cocktail where we flip your skin into these INSCs in just 2 days. And so now we can do this fast enough so that we could actually put these into a patient and start to treat this cancer. And so now that we made the cells, we had to answer some really simple questions. Could we actually kill cancer with this? Nobody had ever looked at it. So we took these INSCs and loaded a drug. I'll show you a couple quick panels here. We took human brain cancer, so glioblastoma cells from a human. We put them in a mouse. You can see the black line shows you how fast they grow, like crazy, about 400-fold in just a couple weeks. With a single dose of the INSC therapy, we can completely stop that tumor growth. We can completely suppress it. When you looked at the tumors, the ones in the control was almost half the hemisphere, almost half the brain was tumor. And with our drug, we can shrink that down to just this tiny little spot. So what does it mean for patients potentially? The survival of these mice went from 25 days to over 65 days. We can almost triple the survival with just the first generation of this therapy. It's really promising. It was the first time that we had ever discovered this. Now the tumor kill is good, but we got to be able to go out and get all those cells that are spread. We didn't know if we could do that. So can the skin go chase these tumors? So we have the stem cells here. These are labeled in green, and these are human cancer cells down here. And we found you can see all those little cells streaming out from where we put them. It means they can go out and they can find your cancer. And if you can play it just once more for me. If you watch the red cells, not only do they find it, once they get to the red cells, you can see them chew them up. Somebody said it kind of looks like Pac-Man. Once they get there, they chew up the little dots. It means that these cells, when we unleash them in your brain, they can find your cancer and they can kill the tumor cells. And then the other video, we don't have to play it, basically shows if we don't have tumor, the cells stay where we put them. So this was not only incredibly exciting for us from the research side, it's led to a lot of good publications for us that should be coming out soon. It's also sparked a lot of innovation for us. And I'm trained as a biologist, so I had no idea how to convert this into a marketable product. But we've had a ton of support from teams at TRAX, the 4D program, Carolina Kickstart, right here at Keenan. We've been upstairs lots of times. The School of Pharmacy has Darren Thacker, the Assistant Dean for Entrepreneurship. They've created a customized team for us where we sit down and we look at this technology. They help us figure out what we can patent, what we should patent, how do we market this. We've been able to launch a startup company this year called Falcon Therapeutics. We filed 2 provisional patents on this just this year alone. And it's really exciting for us to actually, again, transition these basic science discoveries into the marketplace. And we're doing that because of the infrastructure that's here at UNC. But again, all of this technology, all the research, and all the work from the company is to move this therapy into something that will work in a patient. And so we think we're getting close. And so we hope that in the coming years, this is what cancer therapy will actually look like. We can actually take skin from a patient, we can convert it into INSCs, load it with a drug, put them on little devices that the surgeons can then put back into patients. And as Judith mentioned, I think somebody said, you need somebody to believe in your idea to really make progress. And with this great support from the Eshelman Institute, we just received about a $750,000 grant to transition this from the basic science and put this into patients. But it came with a caveat, and that is it has to be fast, it has to be speed. And so it's designed for us to bring together our teams of amazing neurosurgeons, Matt Ewan and the clinicians, neuro-oncologists. We have FDA liaisons guiding us. We even have a cell therapy center here at UNC, which can make this product for us today. They're ready to do it for us. We have partners at Biomedical Engineering who are helping us create little transplant devices. So with this team together, the goal is to put this into patients in 3 years so that we can go through the FDA steps in just 3 years to get it there, because these cancer patients don't have time for us to wait. So I'm sure I've probably gone over time, so just to wrap this all up, it's an amazing support system here, and what it really means is we can create these types of remarkable, innovative iNSC therapies. It's an entirely new direction for stem cells and a new direction for cancer therapy. It's going to let us start shifting that needle in care away from surgery and chemo towards more effective and personalized next-generation cell therapies. It means that UNC will be the absolute pioneers in this technology, leading this as we're putting it both through basic science as well as into patients. It also is sparking a ton of opportunities for entrepreneurship, new products, and new things we can take to the market. But ultimately, what it really means is that we're going to create things that surgeons and clinicians can use to really start effectively treating these devastating diseases. And I want to thank you for all your support, and I can really honestly say that UNC is an amazing place to do this, and we wouldn't be doing this at any other institution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean. I'd like to introduce Shruti, and I wanted to say one word because she's a very quiet person that would never say great things about herself, but she is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. When we first started this, we said, oh my goodness, we have to have a student team, and somehow we got Shruti, and she was the founder of the Chancellor Student Innovation Team that's still going today. And when we rounded up everybody and had about 118 people come to the Rizzo Center to finalize this strategy or work that we've been doing, the students presented theirs, and the adults in the room said, well, why did we do all this work? Theirs is perfect. And Shruti is so amazing. And her company, which again, I doubt if she would tell you, has raised $20 million. And it's just a new company. So, Shruti.
Thank you, Judith, and thanks for having me here today. It's a real honor and privilege. As Judith mentioned, my name is Shruti Shaw. I graduated from Carolina in 2011 and joined Teach for America shortly thereafter, and today I'm the COO and co-founder of a company called MoveLoot that's based in San Francisco. So a little bit of background. When I came to Carolina as a somewhat lost first-year student, I didn't know what I wanted to do, really thought I wanted to go to law school, and my junior year, found the entrepreneurship minor, and it was the first time that I'd found a class and a group of people where everything kind of clicked. All the stuff I was learning in my political science classes or my philosophy classes all of a sudden seemed to make sense. I was being taught how to take all of these great ideas and do something with them. So as Judith mentioned, I was fortunate enough to get to work with her and Chancellor Thorpe at the time on the roadmap for innovation and entrepreneurship. And it was, I think, one of the most exciting things I got to be part of at UNC. At the time, it was when the roadmap was being rolled out, and so I was lucky enough to have this great group of students that came together to really provide input and feedback. And I think what's even cooler is to see now, 5 years later, that it's still having an impact at the university. After college, I moved to California, and with another Carolina grad, had experienced the pain of moving across the country, having to sell all of my stuff in one place, and not really wanting to spend money or time buying all of the same stuff in another place. At the same time, we were doing research around kind of what was the impact of this. If this was a problem that I felt, then it was probably something that a lot of people were experiencing, and there was probably also a lot of waste being generated as a result. So it turns out there's about 10.8 million tons of used furniture that ends up in landfills every year. And we thought, my team, my co-founders and I thought, not only could we do something about that, we could also create an opportunity for people to be able to buy and sell their furniture in a much more convenient way, so that the right choice or the environmentally sound choice was also a choice that was easy for them to make. So we launched a company called MoveLoot. So MoveLoot was launched, actually our website was launched 2 years ago today, but what we decided was that we wanted to make this process easy for people. So we decided that we were going to launch a website and email people on Craigslist and tell them that we were going to pick up their furniture We would photograph it, list it on a website, and sell it for them, and give them half of the sale once it's sold. We had no idea if this was going to work, but on a whim, we all quit our jobs. We got a 1,200 square foot warehouse in San Francisco's Dogpatch neighborhood and started emailing people. And this is actually a problem that is so frustrating for people of what do I do with my stuff, that people were just ready for us to come as soon as possible to take their items. So that's a picture of me before our first pickup. And that's our first storage unit. So that was our first warehouse, if you will. It was very small, and we did all the photography in that warehouse, and we filled it in a week, just with items that people wanted to give us. So now 2 years later, fast forward, we are now currently in 6 cities across the US. We have 2 distribution hubs, including a very strong presence, which I'm really proud to say, here in the Triangle. So we have both a team that does deliveries here, our customer support team is here, and a big distribution center that serves the entire East Coast in RTP. And that's an awesome thing to be able to say, I think. So currently we have a system of hubs and spokes. We operate in all of the cities that you see listed there. We've raised, as Judith mentioned, about $23 million in funding, and have saved 605 tons of furniture. Actually, that number has gone up. I just got the new number for the last year, and it's another 1,500. We have about 100,000 users and 150 employees across the U.S. and growing. So the other thing I'll end with is that I think when we launched Move Loot, we had a vision to kind of solve this pain point that we had experienced as young 20-somethings. What we're actually building is a company that we hope can actually change the way supply chain management and distribution is done. So in our wildest of wildest dreams, we could one day go up against any of the big players in e-commerce, because we fundamentally want to change the way big, bulky items are transported, and it's something that we've really developed over the last couple of years as a unique skill set. And I'll close with saying, I don't think any of this would have been possible, literally, had it not been for my education here at UNC. For some tactical reasons, one being that my co-founder and our CEO was one of my close friends from college, actually also served on the same committee with the roadmap, and he and I had been kicking around ideas and really came together because we had a love for how do we create something. But also, I think, more than that, I think the education I received here was so instrumental in shaping what I thought was possible for what I could be doing with my life. And I don't know if I would have gotten that anywhere else. So it's a really special thing, I think, about UNC and the skill set that it really gave me to, as a 24-year-old, start my first company. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Questions?
I've got one for Dr. Hampton. That is fascinating technology.
Thank you.
The INSCs. It's mind-blowing. 2 specific questions.
Sure.
How long before you could get in full-scale clinical trials?
Yep.
What other cancers are obvious targets for this Pac-Man sort of
Absolutely.
approach?
Sure. So to answer your first question, this technology, even to me, having been in the world, the stem cell area, I thought it would take a few years to get there, right? But the resources at UNC, they have FDA liaisons. One of the big keys was a cell production facility, someplace to make these. There's actually one from UNC right next to the Vector Core on 54 and 40. They said, if you had FDA approval, we could make this drug for you today and you could put it in a patient tomorrow. So we are just getting the resources lined up to start working through the FDA approval with that. But those experts there, the FDA liaisons, are helping us design this whole thing and making it fast. And now with the support from the Eshelman Institute, we have a lot of the resources to start doing those basic science discoveries. And that's the whole gift is designed to be in patients, at least submit the packet for FDA approval in 3 years. So not 15 years, but very fast. Yeah. Yes. And sorry, the next, other targets, right. Yeah, so GBM, very devastating. It has a smaller population, around 10,000 patients. One of the easiest diseases to envision also treating would be metastatic cancer, so melanoma, breast, and that pairs really well with the expertise at UNC, who has one of the world leaders in metastatic brain cancer treatment. And so we could easily adapt that technology, literally would just be treating this new set of patients. We're starting to do that already. We also received another small bit of funding to start doing this in pediatric patients. So children with medulloblastoma is the most common brain cancer. And the survival rate is not quite as devastating, but the side effects from bombarding a young child's brain with radiation are terrible. And so we're working with the pediatric neurosurgeons here to create a model and let us test this as well too. So in the next year, hopefully we'll have some data on that as well. Yeah. Thank you. Sure, fire away.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably for Judith and everybody, but considering that 84% of these designs and the new innovation are coming and are tied to either FDA or a lot of IP approval, do we have a liaison? I know we do a lot of things around here, but do we have an FDA specialist so that we can help? I mean, it's very complicated, and I know this from some other things that we do, and it does take years, like you said.
Sure.
But do we help coordinate with that and also with IP for these people from new companies that want to, whether it's trademark protection or patent or whatever, are we facilitating this, or is it scattered and everybody's looking for their own help?
Sure. So maybe I can comment on my own experience and then I can turn it over. So the answer for me in all of those was yes, which was absolutely amazing to me because it was the first time I had gone through this. So the FDA liaisons, to answer your first question, we were lucky enough to work really closely with the TRACS Institute, and they have their own FDA regulatory experts. But when they realized that some of the cell therapy was outside their expertise, they actually brought in a regulatory expert. So she was with CBER, these cell therapy committees for almost 25 years. And so working with her and RTI, they literally sit down. I have a meeting with them at 1 o'clock. We have weekly meetings to figure out how to do this and do it quickly so that we're not taking time because these cancer patients don't have time. So for us, absolutely, if the expertise wasn't there, they brought it in. And then, also, along with TRACS and then within the School of Pharmacy as well, we have Darren Thacker, and people were looking at the technology from the very first time we told anybody about this, and they said, we need to address areas where we can protect the IP and get on board early. And so, I mean, a lot of this data, we just generated this, a year or two, and we've already filed 2 provisional patents, and they're working with us to identify other areas we could patent that too. So they've been very much on top of it from the beginning. So absolutely. Thank you.
IP is centralized in one office, and that's under the new Office of Commercialization Economic Development. So there's only one place that everyone uses, the hospital, everybody. And we're putting on a couple of new people to work just in pharmacy. I think I mentioned that yesterday. So that part of it is a very centralized project, and I think it needs to be that way. And it seems like the university is comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Really more of a comment. We have the incredible good fortune every other month to hear these presentations. And this morning, they keep getting better and better. This morning is just remarkable, both for all 3 of the presentations. And this goes without saying, but I feel like I have to say it. I mean, when we think about the presentation and we saw the photograph of the patient that you first talked about, and just about everybody in this room is sat by the bedside of someone, this isn't just the entrepreneurship and the innovation, but this is incredibly direct to personal lives. And I know y'all feel that every morning when you wake up, but I feel like I just felt compelled to say that. This is just astounding, and thank you for that. I guess the other thing I may ask Michelle, to talk a little bit about, if I could get a question. Also remarkable in what you've done to move your company as you continue to take this idea, and now with $25 million in funding, are the ways that the university or other networking is helping you continue to grow your idea beyond the foundational blocks that you talked about here. How are you getting support? How are ways that we could, or the university or networking, could support you after your idea is launched?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'll first say I have incredible mentors, some of you who are sitting here today, who still are mentors to me now that I reach out to all the time to ask questions or get help or advice, or they're very kind and introduce me to people. I think more broadly, the university can really be a resource in that way, whether it's people who are currently teaching or connecting alumni who may be in similar fields. I also think one of the things I think a lot about now, we have 60 employees in the Triangle, and in every market we go to, we're looking for people who have college degrees, and we're looking for people who have never graduated high school and who maybe are working in a warehouse, but who provide huge value for our business. And I think the economic development or the hiring process and figuring out how to find talent is something that we've hired a ton of Carolina grads in all of our offices across the U.S., but it's something that I would love to kind of think more broadly about, is if there's a role that the university can play in helping facilitate that and make that happen.
Ed?
If I could, I'm curious to know if you've thought about trying to sell franchises. I'm sure that's part of maybe your marketing plan.
So it's still an ongoing conversation. We aren't totally sold on the idea quite yet. Largely because I think we want to totally iron out our model. I think for a franchise to work well, you have to really know exactly what you're doing, and I think we're still very young. We've grown very fast, but we are very young, and we're still playing with a few things in our model that may allow us to get national coverage more quickly. So if we can do that, we will, but we're still figuring it out.
I'd also, let me just jump in. Just full disclosure, Shruti and I are both from Memphis, Tennessee. We both went to the same very small school in Memphis, and I was thrilled to also have her in the entrepreneurship minor. So we go, well, you still are a very young 20-something, and I'm not. But I think what Jeff brought up is actually just a really good question. And so Shruti has been so great. Not only, she taught a class on Monday that I just happened to be in. She is also very involved with the women in entrepreneurship with undergrads. She is always available, as to the extent that she can be, to talk to our students, so she's a fantastic role model. So I think Jeff flipped it a little bit, and if you would be willing, I think we would love to pick your brain to see how the university could then help support our students who graduate, go on to create their own ventures, and see what we can do to help support you. And there's so many resources here that Judith knows better than anybody that maybe we can help you. I know that Shruti has come to me and Lowry and others because now she's hitting some real issues in the business world. Franchising is just one of them. How you at age 24 or 25 actually begin to manage 100, 150, 200 people. That's pretty daunting. So maybe there are ways that the university and maybe through the business school could help be support to you.
Yeah. I think that would be awesome. A great resource.
Do you have anything? I just wanted to make one observation. And the Board of Trustees in 2009, the folks that were on that board at that time, supported Chancellor Thorpe with this idea of an innovation initiative, because he felt at the time we needed to move in this direction for all the things we've been learning about for the last while. So the board supported it. And the board played a major role in making that happen because of the support. And then the roadmap was launched, and then it took root. But my point is, the Board of Trustees for the last 6-7 years has been very, very important in making all of this happen at Carolina and help this culture get created. And so we have a very important role going forward, because our job is to just blow this thing out and accelerate it and make it more impactful. But it's important to understand the Board of Trustees has played a very, very important role in helping make this happen at Carolina because of all the heavy lifting and support.
Carol?
Could I say one thing about the board? It wasn't in the slides, but you all created the Carolina Research Venture Fund, and it has $10 million in it. And we have put out our RFP to get outside managers so that we have and it's a separate LLC. So you all created a vehicle so that we can put some of that investment dollars into some of these ideas. We get some return on investment. It's an evergreen fund, meaning that money just stays within our cycle of funding and helping find the resources to move these great ideas forward. So another thank you to the board for creating that.
So before we go, we're about to go into a bit of a break, but I just want to reinforce the thank yous. You know, Nancy, thank you so much for coming. Judith, you're amazing. I think, Sean, we're just looking at that research, and I think you've heard so much how deeply meaningful it feels to people, and we're so proud to be a part of it. But I want to say to Michaela, John, and Shruti, what is your next venture? Because we all want to invest in you. I loved it when Shruti first said some things that I think all young people say that we might not have said at the same age. They had jobs, and then they quit them. Then they invested in a company, and she's talking about this great company. She said, and this is my first company. And we're listening to each one of you, and I think you just give us such a... You just help us see in very personal ways the eyes and ears and hands of the future and hearts and minds and all that sitting right here with us. So thank you. It just makes us want to work even harder to help you reach your dreams. So this has just been a wonderful session. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. If you can sit in this room and not be inspired and in awe of the innovation, the research, the startup, I'm going to have Don Curtis go around and check pulses. But thank you very much, all of you, for being here. We're going to take a 20...